The Nintendo Switch came out in March 2017, which makes the Switch more than 6 years old, and we are ready for a next-gen console. Nintendo hasn't officially announced anything, but there have been rumors and a leak. But they're all speculation, there's nothing official just yet. So I thought it would be fun to predict what the next-gen Switch might have. And once Nintendo officially releases the specs, I'm gonna revisit this video and I'm gonna see how right I was. To make sure that you can follow along, I have a list of topics right here that I'm going to be talking about. Let us start with the very first topic. The Switch itself is a very thin device for a reason. Nintendo wants you to bring your Switch out on the go so you can play your games portably. And I do believe that Nintendo wants to stay in the hybrid market because they have definitely hit a gold mine with the Switch and they are not going to try anything different. It is still going to be a hybrid console. I also believe that the Switch, the next generation Switch, is going to be slightly thicker than this one right here. It is possible that the next gen Switch might also be slightly larger, but I'm not entirely sure about that. Because I believe that with the OLED Switch, they've actually shown that you don't need to make the Switch bigger necessarily, but get rid of the bezels instead and change the screen from an LCD to an OLED. A lot of people were actually hating on the Switch OLED when it was announced, but when people got their hands on it, they actually really liked it. So they might actually keep the same size, but they might make it thicker for a reason which I will get into later. Now I would like to talk a little bit about the Joy-Cons. The Joy-Cons also have a lot of technology packed inside of them. They're also very thin, not very ergonomic, and one of the biggest issues that people had was Joy-Con drift. Joy-Con drift has been around since the launch of the Switch, and Nintendo never really acknowledged that it was a problem, but they do fix your Joy-Con thankfully, but you know, not everybody wants to wait a week until your Joy-Con arrives so you can play your Switch again, especially when you don't have another controller to use. In order to keep its portable factor, I do believe that the Joy-Cons are also going to remain thin. They're not going to make it more ergonomic. I believe that they're going to reserve that in order to sell extra cases or grips. The OG Switch has a 6.2-inch LCD screen. In portable mode, it has a resolution of 720p, and in docked mode, it has 1080p. As you can see, this OG Switch also has some very thick bezels. That's why it's 6.2 inches. The OLED, however, has a 7-point-inch screen, and it's OLED, and they got rid of the bezels, which really improved the game experience, especially when you're playing in portable mode. I don't think that Nintendo is gonna go completely crazy with the resolution or screen on the Switch 2. When it comes to the screen, I actually believe that they might keep the 7-inch screen like they used in the OLED and make sure that they also use an OLED screen on the Switch 2. The screen might become slightly larger because, you know, maybe the Switch 2 will be slightly larger and we might get like a 7.3-inch screen or maybe even 7.5. And they're going to mainly focus on portable mode of the Switch 2 because in docked mode it has a 1080p resolution and in portable mode a 720p. I believe they're going to keep 1080p for docked mode on Switch 2, but they're going to up the resolution to 900p on portable mode on the Switch. Now, 720p has been fine on the OG Switch, but in order to make people actually want to buy the next gen Switch, I believe they might actually up the resolution in portable mode. Although I set 1080p in docked mode, there is a possibility that Nintendo might use some kind of upscaler to give a 4K signal, and it might look a little better, but it's not going to be true 4K. Either they're going to keep 1080p or they're going to use some kind of upscaler, but I don't really think they're going to improve the resolution. Remember how I mentioned that the Switch is a very thin device? I also said that they might make it a little thicker because I believe that Nintendo is going to put a bigger battery in the Switch 2. The OG Switch has a 4,300 mAh battery inside of it, which can give you 4 to 9 hours of playtime depending on the game that you play. For example, if you play Breath of the Wild, you can get about 5.5 hours of playtime, which is not enough for a lot of people because we're talking about Zelda here. People are going to spend hours upon hours playing that game. When it comes to the new battery, I believe that the Switch might go up to maybe 5,000 milliamp hours to give the players just a slightly larger battery life. But they're not going to go too crazy because they still want to keep the Switch 2 portable. The Nintendo Switch has an internal storage of 32 gigabytes, and the Switch OLED has 64 gigabytes. I think there's something to note here because Nintendo definitely learned that 32 gigabytes is not nearly enough. 64 might be enough for some people, but not many people. That is why I was very grateful that you can actually expand the memory with a micro SD card up to 2 terabytes apparently. I have 128 gigabytes, which is not enough. Thankfully, you can use a micro SD card up to 2 terabytes, but we shouldn't have to do that. So I do believe that either Nintendo is going to keep 64 gigabytes for the Switch 2, or they might actually improve it and bring it up to 128 gigabytes. You will still be able to expand with a micro SD card up to maybe 2 terabytes again, but they will not use 32 gigabytes again. They will use 64 gigs or 128 gigs of internal storage. Last but not least, games and compatibility. Now, this I find very difficult because I have a couple of things in my mind, but I don't know what Nintendo is going to do. But here is my prediction. I do believe that you'll be able to play your physical and digital games on the Switch 2. I do have a little bit of a doubt in my mind because if Nintendo is going to be mean and greedy, they might actually change the cartridges in a way so it doesn't really fit in your new Switch anymore, and you'll have to either rebuy the game physically, or if you're lucky and you bought it digitally, you might be able to play it digitally. Now, I don't think that Nintendo is going to do this. I really do believe that you will be able to play your games, your physical and digital, on the next Switch. But this was just something that I had going on in my mind. You know, Nintendo can be a little greedy sometimes. So the next gen Switch will definitely be backwards compatible. When it comes to other games, there will be new releases, and I think that they might look very nice on the next Switch, but I don't know if it's going to be a huge improvement because Nintendo, again, has never really been about specs. They are all about fun. So with the resolution that I've predicted on the next gen Switch, I think that a lot of games might look better when you're played in portable mode, especially because you're going to have an OLED screen on the next gen Switch, so it's going to look way better in portable mode than when you dock it. Of course, the games are going to stay either 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. They are definitely not gonna go higher than that. The Nintendo Switch has a very clean and minimalistic, easy to use AI. The Nintendo Switch has a very clean and minimalistic UI that's very easy to navigate. And I actually really like this. This is very pleasant on the eyes. But there have been some people who have been complaining about some things. Like, for example, people would like to use their own wallpaper to personalize their Switch, which I don't think is a bad idea. But I believe Nintendo thinks is a bad idea. When it comes to using your own wallpaper, I believe that people might actually use wallpapers that Nintendo doesn't really approve of, you know? Because they're a family-friendly company and they would like to keep it that way. But what Nintendo might do on the Switch 2 is actually have some wallpapers that you can choose from that they have chosen. Now, of course, people will find a way to hack it, of course, and put their own wallpapers on there, but we're not really here to talk about that. Other than that, I don't really believe that they're going to make a lot of changes to the software because I think Nintendo really likes this type of UI. I think they're going to keep it this way. Those were all the topics that I wanted to talk about. I hope that you've made it all the way to the end. If you did and you enjoyed the content, then maybe like the video and consider subscribing for more, and I will see you in the next video.